Yeah, so we sat down with Eric Griffin, Director of Operations at Positive Energy, and got to talk about his role and the work that they do as an MEP design firm. It's really interesting just to get some insight of what to expect if you're a homeowner and hire them.
Today, we're talking to Eric Griffin with Positive Energy, a progressive building science-based residential, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing design firm. Eric, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
You bet.
Good to have you here. I think we want to just start the conversation by asking a little bit about you personally. How did you get into this field of work? Just tell us a kind of overview of your career path.
So I've always had an interest in building. My dad had a workshop at our house growing up, so I got to do a lot of woodworking, a lot of putting things together.
Nice.
I loved Legos growing up, have a real passion for them. And then I had an opportunity after college just to start building. Started off as a laborer on a multifamily project. I swept buildings,
Nice.
put door handles on.
Okay.
I laid more sod than I care to admit. And then gradually worked my way up to finish superintendent on that and started building homes and somehow magically worked my way to Positive Energy.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
crazy. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of hands-on experience in construction. I'm really lucky for that. It gives me a pretty unique perspective.
Yeah.
Good.
And then I found the Certified Home Energy Rater certification. And I took a lot of classes at Southface in Atlanta and got that certification. And my first provider, my only provider, was Allison Bales at Energy Vanguard.
Oh, yeah.
No way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wait, so were you going back, when you were building houses in 2005, was that, that was not here? Or was
No, that was in Macon, Georgia.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow, how cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got introduced to the world of building science and became enamored with it. It was a really eye-opening experience for me because I was building houses and I just had the sense that I could be doing something better. Like, not only how could I differentiate myself, but this is the way that houses have been building 20 years, and I'm just doing what that same guy down the street is doing, and why?
Yeah.
And so the more I learned, the more I progressed. Well, first off, I found that Macon, Georgia wasn't necessarily the market for that type of service. And it was also a great educational experience to get my foot into a lot of doors that it wouldn't have otherwise gotten into.
You were a Raider. What happened next, and how did you get to Austin?
Well, this is definitely personal. I wanted to get married. I found an amazing woman that loved me back. and we wanted to move somewhere else.
Nice.
And so I was open to closing my business, and she was open to moving. And so, well, I need to find a job. How am I going to do that? Looked online and found some good information, how to be a conference commando. Go to a conference. It's like, seriously, if you look it up, it's out there. Be a conference commando. But it gave you a lot of tips, like how to go to a conference, meet people, really focus on who you can meet and how you can network to try to find whatever it is you're looking for. And so I went to the ResNet conference. It was in Orlando that year, and Allison Bales had asked if anybody wanted to share a condo. And so I volunteered myself and went down there with him. And who did we happen to share that condo with also? Christopher Irwin.
Stop.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right. And then
Good at connecting with
it
well-known
was
people.
absolutely amazing, right? Yeah, I was very lucky for that. Very lucky for that because I went to that conference and I, had my list of who I wanted to meet and who I wanted to ask. And I met them and was kind of disappointed. It's like, oh, that's not really the path for me.
Yeah.
Like I've got lots of really great building experience. I've got this really great background in building science and applying it all. And I think that's just not going to be for me. And so just so happened that at the time, Christoph and Diane were starting their business and kind of getting it up and rolling, and we're hiring.
Yeah.
And so, we engaged in a series of conversations, ended up coming out to Austin, visiting, was like, yeah, I think this will work. And Eleanor, my wife, agreed.
That's awesome.
Great.
Yeah,
Great
absolutely.
timing.
Yeah, it really worked out. Like, it was just lucky timing, just like you said.
Yeah, that's probably true of a lot of people, that the pathway to what they ultimately end up doing was just almost serendipity. It just being in the right place, meeting the right people,
Absolutely.
and everything works out. That's great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, good. So you began working with Christoph.
Yeah.
You guys have grown Positive Energy. And I think the way you've integrated your design work with the local architecture community is an interesting story in itself. And I think, having done this for a long time, it hasn't been that long in residential construction that architects didn't leave all of the mechanical and plumbing design to the trades. And so the introduction to an actual engineering design process is somewhat new. And I would almost say that locally, Christoph is the pioneer. You guys have really taken over and dominated that market here.
We're really lucky to kind of have been a first mover in that. When we were getting started and doing this, I think we were all kind of surprised. Whoa, people will pay for this? This is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
We're so lucky. Austin is an amazing place.
It really is.
I'm not sure that we'd had the same amount of success in any other market, right? We've got people that really genuinely care about the design process. We've got a really active AIA and just loads of very, very, very talented architects locally. So we're really lucky for the circumstances we were set up with. We slowly figured it out along the way, right? Kind of, one of the secrets perhaps is like when we were getting started, and we were surprised that people would pay for this. We're like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, everything's happening design build anyway. Like, we can't mess this up any more than it's already being messed up out there in the world, which is a really kind of interesting thing. That's perspective 12 years ago, right? We've grown and learned a lot and have developed our design processes to a point where, it's highly valued in the market, and we're solving problems with electrons in the computer at our desk before it becomes a much more expensive and hard problem to solve out in the field.
Yeah.
And those, like, I'm sure, I'd love your perspective on this as builders. Those kind of pivots in the field, I can only imagine they maybe feel like really deep compromises to everybody around. Like, if you haven't gone through a design process and you're out there, like, you're probably going into your Wayback Machine before you have done designs or whatnot, when you were building houses without designs and kind of on the fly. I imagine that all the things you had to do to fit mechanicals in, electricals in, perhaps even some plumbing every now and then, felt like significant compromises out there in the field and kind of diminished the architectural intent along the way, right?
I feel like that applies to so many things, where if you could plan ahead of time and avoid those compromises, why would you not? Especially, for me, like, looking at something that could have been easily avoided is so frustrating, and like, to have to live with that and look at something every day that I'm not happy with. It's like, why not just take some time and plan it? It's so valuable.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I would like, if you could we start by could you give us kind of an outline of, like, if a homeowner was to hire you for full services, just like, what are those services that Positive Energy offers?
Yeah, so we'll do comprehensive mechanical design, electrical design, and plumbing design. Plumbing's, drain waste vent, water supply, hot water recirculation, advocating for heat pumps. Everything. That's going to be a theme that you will hear throughout this. Same thing with mechanical. We're very intensive, deep design coordination with the ductwork going through the building, advocating for best practices all the way around. We do specify a lot of VRF equipment and heat pumps. There are certain circumstances where you kind of like, for life safety reasons, you can't get away from using gas, but really try to advocate and prevent that from being used on any of our projects. Kind of forward thinking, progressive, right?
Okay.
Electrical, probably one of the most dynamic fields that we're involved in right now, because man, the innovation that's happening out there
And the
right
integration.
now is so challenging to keep up with. Like every day, it seems like some fascinating new product is coming out. So we do deep dives on coordination for electrical services, because you've got, span panels that are doing load management. You've got a whole host of battery integration stuff that's happening, of course, solar panels. And so people want backup, resiliency, reliability. And we're doing really deep dive in electrical services now as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
good.
Yeah, and when we're putting together, we like to sell all three of them at the same time. They all go together, right? If you're doing just mechanical design, you're probably not thinking about where the plumbing pipes are.
Right.
All right. If you're doing electrical design, you need to know what's happening with the mechanical and the plumbing so that you can give them power that they need. So it's all integrated, systems of systems, system thinker.
Obviously, locally here, historically, we experimented architecturally in the 70s and early 80s with more modern Western designs. Like we called it California contemporary, with vaulted ceilings and lots of glass. And I think that was a challenge for us to effectively create energy efficient, high performing homes with that style of architecture and those construction methods. And so for some reason, architecturally, we evolved for a period of time with very traditional houses. Lots of boxy, New England style, East Coast type designs, which were a lot easier to manage from an energy efficiency standpoint. And we were able to get away with a lot of things. And about that time, the EPA started recommending certain practices. Turns out a lot of those were wrong, right? And we slowly began to move out of that traditional design and into more modern designs here locally. And the challenges then were you can't ham-handedly install mechanical and electrical and plumbing systems in these houses because their designs are so elegant and intricate. It just doesn't fit. And you run into so many times where you had to force those systems to fit into that design, and then they didn't perform right.
Right.
So we had to ask for professional advice during design. How do you do this? How do you make all of those things integrate together? The structural designs became more sophisticated, and the structural engineers started talking to the mechanical engineers and say, how do we route these duct systems? Where do we put this mechanical equipment to make it all work right? And I think we're settling in now on something that actually works, thanks to you guys making that effort.
Oh, well, thank you. Right. I mean, we a large part of our success comes from early adopters, right? And Reisinger and the crew were early adopters of positive energy, and we owe a lot of our success in the early days to companies like y'all.
Well, can I get that
Making it
writing
happen.
somewhere?
I'll write it wherever you like, Tim.
Well, let's talk about how do we typically work together? A client, let's say, just to start us off, a client comes to us and they typically have, sometimes they don't have an architect, sometimes they have an architect engaged. And then we typically, if the architect doesn't already have engineers and designers they work with, we make a lot of recommendations and we work on a lot of projects together. So I guess, when do you typically get engaged, or when do you want to be engaged, and what does that process look like?
Right. So the earlier, the better. And everybody's design process seems to be just a little bit different. We have tried to really hone what we do. So it's kind of a repeatable process. People get familiar because, to one of your points earlier, people are still figuring out, builders, architects in the residential spectrum are still trying to figure out how to work with MEP engineers. Not everybody has experience. And so we do a lot of education and advocacy along our design process. And then once we've worked with an architecture firm a couple of times, we start to get into routine, right? Okay. And everybody kind of understands the nuances, the pluses or minuses of certain decisions along the way. Mm-hmm. And that's how I would answer that question. Is a little bit different. But we do like to get started as early as possible. Sometimes it's a little bit too early. Yeah. Like, well, we don't really have very much guidance for you. You know, we can advise you on, you know, relative shapes of mechanical spaces and, you know, concepts of how much space you're going to need for electrical or this, that, or the other. But there is a point at which it's a little bit too vague. So it's kind of nice to have a little bit of a mold to be able to talk about. And then early on, it's also kind of interesting. We've got some really engaged homeowners that really like to be a part of the process and some that are just not.
What's that like? Do you typically, that's kind of interesting to me thinking about, you know, typically, at least in commercial realm, the architect is kind of doing a lot of coordination and sometimes the client really isn't interacting with any of the consultants. Mm-hmm. So what's the breakdown look like as far as how many homeowners are kind of more involved or less involved?
Oh man. I don't actually have a statistic in this, but I would say that the majority of the types of projects that we're currently working on, we have very limited interaction directly with the owners of the project. And probably, you know, if I had to put a number to it, probably 10 to 20% of our projects have owners that are actively engaged and want to be a part of the process. And I think it depends on what the owner's aptitudes and interests actually are, right?
Yeah.
You know,
it's probably a foreign field to most.
Right, exactly. We get asked by architects sometimes, like, would you like the owners there? And our answer is, well, of course, they're absolutely welcome to be there. However, like, especially if it's an early meeting, we often find that we need to have something on paper, something tangible to talk about. Because what we as design professionals and architects, as design professionals and builders, we already know a lot of this stuff and can put it together in our head and kind of figure it out. Our owners rarely have that ability or the amount of experience it requires to actually do that. So we like to have something on paper before we talk to them, before we talk to the owners based on their experience and interests and typically, right? But then, you know, as soon as they want to, we love that engagement because I think that ultimately we end up with a better product, better service, better end result for them because you catch those little nuance, those little nuance things that they'll say. It's like, oh, you just said that. Well, I need to dig into that because, you know, I want to make sure that you end up with what your expectation actually is.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah. And so.
Well, and I imagine you're better at explaining and catching all of those nuance things too than like an architect might be. Like it's so in the weeds at a certain point.
I do not envy the position of builders or architects because you have to be a jack of so many trades, right? You have to know so much specificity about so many broad categories, right? Whereas, you know, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, that's our niche. Even internally though, like it's hard for us as experts in mechanical to really be experts in electrical, right? So there's specialization within everything. But that, you know, goes back to the whole idea of having a good consultant, knowing who to ask questions and really like working on your communication skills to be able to ask the questions when they're important or be willing to ask the questions to figure out what you actually want.
We had a project 4 or 5 years ago with you guys, and the clients weren't local. They were somewhere else in the country, and this is with their second home. And the design criteria, the standard design criteria for mechanical systems, you know, has a upper limit of like 95 and a lower limit of like, you know, what?
Here in Austin, 30 degrees?
30 degrees, right? And so the owners never answered the questions. How did they like their indoor air temperature swings.
Oh, yeah.
And we found out after the fact that, we like to sleep at 66 degrees in our bedroom at night. Well, the system wasn't designed to do that, and we had to manipulate the controls of the system to make that happen with you guys' help, of course.
Sure.
But those are the kind of communications that are so critical during
that's a
design.
good example.
That's exactly
To make
right.
sure you design it to their expectations.
That's exactly right. And it's really important to get that information early. Getting below 70 degrees inside a house can be very challenging.
Yeah.
So indoor set temperatures are absolutely important. Another thing that we run into like surprisingly a lot is how long people will actually take a shower. Like that is one of our routine design questions,
it's not to
right?
bathe, it's therapy.
Interesting.
Right. Like
Stand there,
like-
maybe all my problems will go away.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like, wow, you take a 45-minute shower? I'm going to have to do something special for that.
Interesting.
But it also is like, one of the early design questions that you ask, and it's like, okay, I'm about to ask you a really personal question. How do you bathe?
It is. Well, and that's like something really interesting about residential work in general is like you really start to know a client really well and know about a lot of personal preferences because there's so many decisions that get made that really influence how they're going to live their life.
Yeah, that's why I love the residential spectrum. I have zero interest in commercial. It's that intimate connection, right? Like
That's right.
so many of the folks that we're building for, like their home, like I don't know what metaphor I want to use or how I want to describe it, but it's like massively important. It's where they're going to be spending so much of their time, right? Like I wanted to say it's their baby, but like maybe it's not quite quite there, but like pretty close, right? Very significant, and to have that intimate connection, be able to have that amount of impact and what their quality of life can be on a regular
really
basis
special.
is very special. Yeah.
I'm curious.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you holistically understand how the clients live and you get to know them well enough by asking them the right questions, ultimately, I believe that your goal is to design a home where the clients are comfortable year-round, but don't even realize why. The system is working
kinda
so well
disappears.
that they don't really have to manipulate it or manage it. It's designed so well to meet their needs that they just know they're comfortable.
We want them to ultimately have the experience that they don't even think about it, right? Just because it meets their needs subtly in the background. And when they go to other people's homes or other places, that's when they notice. Like, this place feels sticky.
Yeah.
Or like,
Well, it's often that, like, I think when you travel, you go somewhere and you realize how much you appreciate something you have at home. Or, wait a second, maybe I need to upgrade this item because I didn't realize how uncomfortable the other way is.
Absolutely. I think it's out there in the world. Generally speaking, I think that a lot of people don't really appreciate how poor their experience with their air conditioning or their environment in general actually is. I'm thinking about my personal home, right? It's a production builder home. Man, my air conditioning unit is loud. It is right outside of my bedroom. I've got one system for both levels, and it's never quite right. I make adjustments along the way.
Fix that for you.
Right, I know, right?
The cobblers.
Well, I mean,
have issues.
it mostly works, but it's going to be really, what's nice about doing a design process and trying to get it right from the beginning is that what it's going to cost and the compromises that I'm going to have to make or like to fix this now is going to be significant.
Oh, yeah. It's
First
so much
off,
easier to design it right to start with.
To do anything different,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to start to upgrade my electrical panel. Like that's the first thing I've got to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Bummer.
Right. And to really modify it, you'd have to dig into the drywall and modify the duct system probably.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's almost impossible in an existing home.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. I'm going to have to tear so much apart.
Yeah.
When you've had as much experience with like diagnosing buildings and understanding what's going on it's kind of funny when I do projects around the house and I'll, cut holes in sheetrock. I'm like, I know what I'm going to see when I get up there. It's like, oh yeah, the trusses that go into my garage just are wide open to my living space. So oh my gosh, that's going to be like $10,000 to fix. Like they could have done it for like $100 when it was open and under construction. Wow. Yeah. What a nightmare. Yeah. And then, budgeting and like, hey wife, you want to spend $10,000 fixing the air barrier? Oh man.
Yeah, that's a hard sell.
You have an electrical vehicle yet?
Not yet. That's a life goal, though. Yeah. Hopefully soon.
Yeah, I have fears that those garages that are not at least fire isolated from the homes.
Scary, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's if you use your garage to park in. I use mine as a woodworking shop and workout space.
I want to go back just a bit, like on other things like that maybe you ask pre-design or things that come up that you've learned. Like what are some things that clients could be thinking about, like that you need to know in order to design the right systems for them?
Yeah, I'd say one of the most important parts is where do they like to set their thermostat?
Okay.
It's interesting the responses that you get back when you ask that question. You get wild swings. Some people say they're okay with 78, and we're suspect.
Yeah.
Some people will say, I like it at 72, but that's because my house is really leaky, and I'm sure this new house is going to be different. So I'm not sure exactly where we want to have it. And then of course you have the folks that say, I want it to be 65 in the middle of summer. And then we need to engage in a conversation and be like, well, that's going to be really hard to do. Mm-hmm. You're going to double your mechanical equipment. You're going to double your budget for that. The first step is making sure that your building envelope is right. Mm-hmm. It's like, first off, in places like Austin, you're going to be below dew point on the inside at that temperature all the time. So be extra careful. Like it is, have a good builder, make sure it is airtight, and then make sure it's like very well insulated because you want to live in a cooler.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which also speaks to air conditioning equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Modern homes are now integrating whole house ventilation equipment and whole house dehumidification equipment, at least in our climate. Speak to that just a second about the broader design systems that speak to more than just temperature.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we are on the front edge of the wave of including all of these additional systems inside houses. Building code and just building practice in general, like people are starting to routinely make their houses more airtight, which is lowering the loads on the inside, which is making humidity management that used to be kind of marginally acceptable, much more delicate thing to balance. Ventilation is next. It's going to come in, and it's going to be probably mostly code driven, but also like as more and more people are starting to live in these really well designed houses, really well built houses, their expectations are going to be much higher than what their lived experiences. And also like sensors. Oh my gosh. I think we're about to see a wave of development of indoor air quality sensors that's going to start giving people real-time feedback.
Yeah.
And I bet anybody else who has that in the back of their mind is like, oh man, what are we going to do? Because we're going to hear when their CO2 goes up to 1,000 parts per million.
Man.
Like,
for sure.
It's like, are we actually going to accomplish what they want? So one of the first things that I would pay attention to if I were looking into design or kind of trying to think about incorporating these systems is, where's my mechanical space? How is it going to be accessed? And it's fascinating. We have the luxury of working on some really prestigious properties and like tens of thousands of square feet houses. And we'll often see the first pass of a house, and there's almost no mechanical space. It's like, we can't, I don't even know where to begin talking of this. So like early in the design process, where's your mechanical space? How are you going to access it? How are you going to service it? Who's going to be servicing? Are you going to be humane about how this equipment is going to be serviced in the future? Are you seriously going to ask somebody, an adult, to, crawl on their belly 30 feet across your crawl space to change a filter?
Wow.
Like,
yeah.
Oh,
Need to be more mindful about planning
absolutely.
for these things.
So, and so whether you're, hiring a professional or doing it yourself, that space, right, is massively important. It's important for electrical. It's important for your water heaters, and it's important for your mechanical systems.
Yeah,
well.
and that is one thing you have to say about commercial design is they do have a back of house in every design they do where all the messy stuff and all the systems go.
Absolutely.
That's easy to walk into, access on a regular routine basis. Easy to inspect to see if there's a problem or a leak or something. And if there is, it's generally set up in a system that has accommodation for accidental overflow or leaks, taken out by secondary drains or whatever. I would agree with you that it'd be nice to have more of that in residential construction.
Yeah. And I understand why it's not.
It's not
often
necessarily
there.
elegant. It can be clunky.
Well, sometimes it's just hard to prioritize that space too, because if the homeowner doesn't understand that, they're maxed out the site and they still need to allocate a certain number of square footage to mechanical spaces.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just gets hard to squeeze it in and it gets squeezed in and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. And like, I'm also sensitive, like, we work on some really high budget projects as well. And, if you're talking $1,000 a square foot just for easy math, and I'm asking for 4 more square feet in your mechanical space, I'm asking for $4,000 of your
great
build
point.
cost.
Yeah.
That you don't get to
just
really, you don't think
space.
you get to enjoy. It's just like,
Right,
well, that's just for
exactly.
the systems, but in reality, it kind of speaks to the quiet things in the background that are working, and to be able to have them working well where you don't notice them.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So there really is a huge amount of value in it, like you're pointing out.
Yeah.
But it is a hard sell.
It is.
Often.
But if you do the math, I'm going to say it's, 2% of the square footage for a good mechanical space? It's not much. Right?
Yeah.
100 square feet is very adequate for most mechanical spaces.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it depends on the size of the house that you're talking about and how distributed the spaces are. So it's a really tough question to answer. But yeah, you're right. It's not that much that you're actually asking for in the whole realm of things that you're talking about on a project. It is also the main drive, like in my perspective, the main driver of satisfaction with the end product, right? Like if you build a nice new house and it's not comfortable, bummer. Like, how disappointing is that? And kind of also makes me think like sustainability, right? Like the most sustainable project is one that doesn't get torn down immediately.
Yeah, definitely.
Or the one that you don't have to do demolition to service it and replace equipment.
Exactly. Yeah, we've been on projects like that where, they're just going to have to remove this ceiling when they need to replace this unit. Like, really?
Yeah, that just doesn't seem very...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as an architect and their clients are working with you and the design kind of evolves and gets refined, I've been on calls before. We're meeting with other consultants and coordinating. When we get to the end of the design phase, this is all pre-construction. What are the deliverables? I'm just thinking in terms of like when a client is going to hire you, when they get to the end of the project, we're ready to start construction. What are we getting and what do we like to move into construction with in terms of sort of like design deliverables?
Right. So in the typical design process for us is we're going to deliver 6 different documents for review is kind of a typical process. And it's SD, DD, and CD and 2 deliverables for each one of those, total of 6. The SD, in our process, we like to take like a full design effort, pretty comprehensive. Sometimes we deliver it and people are a little concerned that we've gone too far.
Okay.
And Yeah, I will agree with that. And we're actively trying to figure out exactly how far to go. Mm-hmm. But we do it intentionally because it starts all of the conversations that you need to have.
Yeah, you need something to react to.
You're claiming your space.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. It is a space claiming exercise for us. So we also are trying to be a little bit aggressive because it's easier to take it then and give it back later than it is to ask for more later in the process. We do take that because especially, with the exception of all the renewables and all the resiliency factors that go into electrical, it's relatively prescriptive.
Right.
Plumbing, very similar. It's very prescriptive. Mechanical, it is art and science. Nobody wants to see the work that we do.
We only want to feel it.
Right. You only want to feel it,
right.
You have to be creative, and you can be creative. And you've got to figure out where all those things can go. And you've got a lot of options. Mm-hmm. So you have to balance the form and the function with the mechanical designs. And that's one of the reasons why we go so far in our designs, because you can't really do that whole design process in your head. Mm-hmm. You have to draw it out on paper, and you've got to know where you're starting and where you're ending. And you've got to sometimes have some hard conversations.
I never thought about it like that. But of the three disciplines, the mechanical is the more dynamic one. Mm-hmm. Electrical and plumbing are integrated services that the owner controls. You turn on a switch, you plug in a plug, you open a valve, you control when it is active. The mechanical system, it's active whether you're asking for it specifically at that time or not. And so it takes more space and more thought, and it takes more area. You're going to
just distribution
see
alone.
the distribution more in your face. And to hide that in elegant slots or diffusers, sometimes is an architectural integration that electrical and plumbing don't necessarily require.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's cool because you can do that.
Yeah.
Right.
So as we move from SD or schematic design and you've kind of laid it all out there, I'm sure you get a reaction and it gets refined. What do the next steps look like?
Refinement is mostly it.
Okay.
Depending, we take that big leap in SD, and it's kind of like a baseball analogy, right? You either hit a home run or you strike out. And so we're pretty good. So usually we're hitting, triples, right? To keep with the metaphor. And so hopefully you don't have to do a bunch of redesign, and it's just refinement. And you're trying to have the conversations and engage with the rest of the project team to make sure that you're clearing all the structural hurdles, or you're identifying at least areas like, this area is going to be a problem for all of us. We need to figure out how to overcome it. And you're also trying to have the conversations with the architect. It's like, this is what you're going to see.
Right.
And know that this is going to be here, and this is going to be big. And you've got some, there are ways to massage this, but you're going to see this.
Right. Okay.
Type of conversations. And so throughout the process, and depending on who you're working with, some architects are a little bit more flexible and kind of amenable to seeing things. Others don't want to see anything at all. And so the level of integration, the level of detailing that you're getting into that kind of varies. But you're constantly trying to make progress moving forward, just integrating and making sure that you're refining and ultimately meeting the goals of the project. Right.
So when you get to the end, I would like to hear you talk a little bit about, because I think people enjoy seeing them, are all of the diagrams and sort of like 3-dimensional drawings that are provided to show what the systems are, where they go, and how we're going to actually install them.
Yeah.
Well, could you just touch on a few of those types of things?
So we work exclusively in Revit. So everything that we do is in 3 dimensions. We can work with architects that work in 2 dimensions. It's much more challenging. And you often have to ask for extra sections because because it's very difficult to understand exactly all those
Right.
interconnections when planes are changing
Right.
directions and whatnot. And so we often have to ask for that. A lot of our project partners are already in Revit and are moving that way. Multiple different structural engineers are starting to get into Revit or have a lot of experience in Revit. So it's becoming much more integrated. And so everything that we do is in 3 dimensions. And I think one of our really neat things that we do is at the end of our design process in our CD documents, we'll put a QR code on there that provides a link to our 3D model. And whoever scans that QR code can go online. You can't see the architectural background on it, so you have to be familiar with the project enough, but that's who it's for. Mm-hmm. But you can spin our entire model
That's awesome.
around in one view and see it from any
Now,
angle
that's very
that you
helpful
want
for
to.
the mechanical contractor
Absolutely.
on site.
It's amazing.
Absolutely. Because one of the things that I hope maybe somebody can figure out, it's hard to do, is kind of relaying the 3-dimensional aspects of our designs. Mm-hmm. Sometimes things have to cross over each other, and
Sure.
I've heard, the derogatory term of it looks like a bowl of spaghetti.
Yeah.
Right? and sometimes it kind of does, frankly, but there are multiple layers going on that will serve one floor, and it's really hard to show that graphically on a piece of paper.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Right? It's
It
very,
is.
very, very challenging.
You guys do such a good job of it, though, because even I think it was earlier this week, we were in a meeting with an architect who has used you guys on the project,
Mm-hmm.
and we were looking at one of the diagrams, and things are color coded. So when it does get to be that spaghetti bowl, at least we can follow the color and figure
Right.
out which noodle is which.
Yeah.
But it's super helpful. It's such a we communicate in drawings and graphics, and it's so much easier to read than a just like a black and white 2D plan.
Yeah. This project that
Absolutely.
we have working with you right now, we have great mechanical spaces for the equipment. And in the floor cavity, we have great distribution cavities for the duct to flow through. But the transition from the mechanical space down into the floor space is a challenge, and I'm anxious to see how you resolve those transitions in 3D. That will be an interesting exercise. But I know you can do it. I've seen it before.
No comment.
Yes, it will.
Yeah.
It always is. One of the things that may or may not be unique about positive energy, but is definitely one of our best qualities, is that we care a tremendous amount, and we're a bunch of nerds that like to build stuff and want to be doing the same stuff on our own homes. And so we kind of apply that whole perspective into each one of our designs. We want to make sure that what we're producing is actually usable, right? We try to put ourselves in the position of the guy that's out there, putting together the ductwork. What does that guy need to see to be able to make this real, to be able to pull this off? Constantly asking ourselves, what is the most useful thing in this design process that somebody
that.
needs to be able to see? And so that's where that QR code with the 3D model came from. That's, we try to set up as many views as possible, convey that depth that we're talking
great.
about.
I'll relay a plug, if I can, that the mechanical contractor or contractors that we use have told me that with that 3D model, it saves them thousands of dollars worth of personal planning and distribution, head scratching time that they have to spend when they don't have that. Yeah. And that has value.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. We want our work to be used,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We want it to be useful.
Right.
Sure.
You don't want
Right.
to go to all
And
that
so we're
effort
trying
and
to
that.
figure out the best ways to do that on every project. I was, we've recently hired some folks, and we're training them, and they were asking about the variety of projects that we work on. And, this year, we've worked on everything from a 600 square foot passive house to like a 50,000 foot estate.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's
What a wide
fascinating. And he
range.
was asking if we, like, do we do anything different for that house than we do for that house? Like, no. Do them exactly the same. And actually, that 600 square foot one, that's really, really hard.
Oh, I bet. I feel like that's probably
Like
far more
every one of those,
challenging.
every square inch of that project
Yeah.
is very important, right?
Wow.
Right.
It's funny. You don't. I suppose those who know, but those small projects are challenging in comparison.
Interesting.
Well, I feel like that's a really good overview of positive energy and sort of the value that they bring to projects. I'm wondering if we could end with some takeaways or tips, or like maybe what advice would you give yourself knowing what you know if you were about to start building a house?
So in my free time, I like to just sketch. I'd like to pretend like I'm an architect. And then quickly stop that because it's not where I need to be. But the first thing that I do when I start like sketching up a floor plan or something that I want to build, it's like, where am I going to put my mechanicals?
Yeah.
Start there.
Like, it just makes everything easier
Yeah.
ultimately in the long run, because I do think genuinely feel bad for what we ask of our installers. All like, look, going back to my experience at my house right now, how I don't feel comfortable asking somebody to replace it. It's just a standard mechanical closet, upright vertical air handler in a closet. But like, my adult human arms don't reach the back of that equipment. How are we supposed to do this? And so, like, provide the space for good work, right? How are you going to be able to do that? Like, that would be my focus.
That's
Right?
great.
And what I would recommend to anybody is like, not only for the present of what's happening right now, but things are changing in our industry. New technology is coming, and oftentimes it's bigger
Yeah. A
than
little flexibility
the
for
space
future.
that we have,
Right.
and the space that we've provided.
Right.
And that's problematic. Just a few years ago, didn't that happen with water heaters? I'm pretty sure they got just like an inch or two wider. Like craziness,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
They're
put a lot
already
of people in a pickle,
in there.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, so what do you do?
Right.
Make sure that you have space to do good work.
Constructability and serviceability.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Good.
I think I've got one final question that we like to ask everyone.
Interesting.
And it's, if you weren't doing what you're doing now, what might you be doing? What other kind of career would you be interested in?
Oh man, I I love gardening.
Okay.
I have had so much fun at my house. I started with a blank slate of grass, and I have slowly over time. I've got a really nice porch back there. I've got all sorts of different native plants. I've got I could give you a list.
Gardening is very cathartic.
I love it. Oh yeah,
It is.
absolutely. It is. It is where I go to zen out.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good.
Well, thanks so much for coming
Yeah,
here
thanks for the
today and having
opportunity. This has been a lot of
conversation.
fun.
Yeah, appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
That's it for another episode of Work in Process. Thanks for listening. If you've got a question, a topic suggestion, or want to start a project with us, send an email to hello@risingerbuild.com.
You can also find us on Instagram at risingerbuild_ATX or on YouTube by searching Risinger Build. We'd love to hear from you.